Next week, the GLC is launching a campaign against the Police and Criminal Evidence Bill, which, according to its critics, will lead to a dramatic increase in police powers and looks like being the subject of fierce argument in Parliament over the next few months. Critics of the bill, who include the Law Society and the Magistrates Association, complain that it will dangerously extend police powers to stop people on the street and search them, to set up roadblocks, and to search homes, even of innocent people, to look for evidence. There have also been complaints that the police have been given the power of arrest for extremely trivial offences, and that they will have the right, in certain circumstances, to detain suspects for questioning at the police station for up to 4 days without charge, and even to deny them access to a lawyer for up to 48 hours. One of those most concerned about the bill is Harriet Harman, former legal officer of the National Council for Civil Liberties, and now Labour MP for Peckham. To answer her points, the chairman of the Police Federation, Leslie Curtis, joins us from Norwich, where he's attending a police conference. Harriet Harman, we've already listed some of the objections to the bill, which you and others share, but may I put it to you that many people are concerned with rising crime rates. There was a policeman shot in London today trying to stop a robbery, and they feel that any legislation which would help to bring those crime figures down would be welcome.
Well, I would welcome legislation which would bring crime figures down, but one of my main criticisms of this bill is that it fails to deal with the problem of increasing burglaries and crime on the streets. This bill will do actually nothing to help the very real problem that Londoners face, that we all face, those of us who live in London, of increased crime. So that's my first criticism. The second is that the way it increases powers for the police will simply antagonise the public without doing anything to help the police catch criminals. In fact, it will be likely to be counterproductive. And thirdly, that it fails to provide any safeguards for suspects to ensure that innocent people are not convicted of crimes they haven't committed. So we think really this bill is nothing more than a sort of slogan, and it plays on people's real fears. I mean, people have got problems and this bill won't solve them.
Well, may I at this point go to you, Leslie Curtis? I know that you'll want to take up some of those criticisms, but before you do, I understand that you and your members have your own criticisms of the bill from your side, the bill as it now stands. What are your concerns?
Yes, we do have some criticisms of the bill. This is a big bill, and it covers two particular facets, one which you've mentioned regarding the powers of arrest and stop and search, but it equally covers a facet of police discipline and complaints against the police. And it's that part of the bill which my organisation, the Police Federation, are very upset about.
What do you object about in that?
Well, on that part of the bill, we feel that there is a very, very weak attempt to satisfy some vociferous minorities in the demand for independence, and we feel that there's only one way to satisfy that sort of demand, or at least to attempt to satisfy it, and that is to have a totally independent system. The proposals within the bill, within that particular part of the bill, have completely ignored something which my organisation and the police service of the federated ranks have been crying out for many years, and that is the need for civil rights in these complaints problems for the police officer.
If you are being given extra powers, though, of stop and search and arrest, isn't it all the more vital that in the public interest that you should be even more accountable, that you should be under even more intense scrutiny?
We've got no objection to accountability. Accountability, we argue, is there 100% now. What we are saying is the attempts being made under this bill to show the public that there is going to be more of an independent element in the investigation of their complaints against the police officer, the attempts being made in this bill will not satisfy those critics who say that when the police service are complained against, they will whitewash the whole issue and we will not get satisfaction.
Could I go back to you, Harriet Harman, on the points of complaints procedure and on the points of safeguards against abuse of these new powers by the police? There are safeguards written in, are there not, to the bill?
Well, I agree with Leslie Curtis on his and the Police Federation's views about the police complaints procedure, because what we both say is that it's not good enough to leave the investigation of complaints against the police in the hands of the police themselves, because the public fear that the police are being judge and jury in their own cause, and then they're not happy at the end of an investigation of a complaint, and therefore we share the Police Federation's view, which is that there should be an entirely independent investigation procedure. We also share his view that police officers should, like all other employees, have protection against unfair dismissal.
But
so on that we agree, but on the rest of the bill we don't.
What about the question of safeguards which have been written in on the stop and search? I mean, for example, a policeman, if asked, is supposed to give his name and his reasons for stopping and searching.
Well, I think with stop and search powers, the police already have very wide powers to stop and search for firearms or explosives or drugs. And what causes concern is random stopping and searching. The police driving along in a Panda car and they see a couple of lads walking down the street, they stop them, turn out your pockets, and they're not really searching for anything in particular. They're just going on a fishing expedition. And the problem with that is that innocent people feel very resentful of it, and a lot of people would think, well, what have the innocent got to fear? But I think that if you are searched over and over again and you are innocent, it causes a great deal of resentment. And Lord Scarman pointed to this in his report on the Brixton riots, which is that random stopping and searching, particularly of young people, actually causes antagonism, but it doesn't really help to solve street crime. And therefore, what the bill does is actually increases the powers that are already causing problems. We think the powers should actually be tightened up.
And it would increase antagonism and perhaps reduce cooperation with the police on the part of the general public.
That's right. We've always said that the police and the public need to cooperate together to reduce crime, but if the police have greater powers and the public resent them, then there will be less cooperation from the public for the police.
Leslie Curtis, your view on that?
Well, it's the old argument that's always put up. This business of stop and search will create hassle for certain categories, and nobody can doubt that that does happen from time to time. But one has to put this in perspective. If in fact there is crime, and there is an abundant amount of crime, much of which is not being detected, and that's a very sad reflection of the present state of the situation, there has got to be something done to assist the police in detecting crime. Now, it is a fact, and it's an undeniable fact, that the ability for a police officer or police officers on the street in the course of their patrol who see somebody who they don't know, and it's happened to me many, many times in my experience on the street, who they don't know, who they are doubtful about, who's perhaps during the course of the night, and we do get to know our locals, doesn't matter whether it's in an inner city or whether it's in the rural area, during the course of the night, you want to stop these people to find out who they are and what they're doing in that area. And that's in the interest of the public. I would say to Harriet Harman, if in fact her house had been burgled and I was the policeman out on the street and she'd phoned up the police station reporting this situation, would she not want me to stop almost at random anybody that was in the vicinity who I couldn't consider to be bona fide to try and detect her burglar?
All the evidence shows, though, that random stopping and searching doesn't catch the person who might have burgled my house. So I think that it's a completely false way of putting it. Random stopping and searching doesn't actually increase the detection rate.
What about the code of practice which the bill sets out to replace the present judge's rules on the rights of people detained in the police station? Do you think that code of practice will be an improvement on the judge's rules?
Well, no. I think the main problem with the judge's rules, and they're a set of rules to safeguard suspects in a police station, is that they're not respected by the police, and rights such as the right to see a lawyer and the right to know what your rights are completely ignored in the police station. Now, the draft code of practice, which has come out with the bill, actually says that you should be allowed to see a lawyer in the police station, but the trouble is that if the police don't let you, there's no sanction for breach of those rules, and therefore we fear the current situation will continue, which is that people will be kept on their own in police stations and not allowed legal advice. And this, unfortunately, does lead to innocent people being convicted.
But this comes down in a way to the trust of how the police are going to behave. To trust or otherwise in how the police are going to behave in such a situation.
Well, it's been shown by government reports in the past that unless there is some sanction for breach of rules, rules are not obeyed, and therefore we must have enforceable suspects' rights.
Leslie Curtis.
Well, I don't agree with anything that's just been said. there is sanction within the bill if any of the codes of practice in fact are breached. In fact, there is a clause there which said if the codes are breached, then disciplinary action will be taken against, and the bill quotes the word the person. But let's be realistic about it. The person in this context, with the exception of perhaps of customs officers or immigration officers, but mostly this is directed at the police officer. There are an enormous number of safeguards, both in the codes of practice and within the clauses within the bill, for the suspect in the police station. And the issue that Harriet said about the delay in informing solicitors, there's even a safeguard there, where it says that we must give the reason for the delay, and if it's an extended delay, it's got to have the authority of a senior officer who's not connected with the case.
Well, I must stop you both there. We said at the start that it was a bill which would be the subject of much argument in Parliament, and thank you both for underlying tonight for us why this undoubtedly is going to be so. Thank you both.